Hello, everybody. My name is Chuck Peters, and I'm a curator in the Institute of Economic Botany, and I'm also the editor of the monograph series Advances in Economic Botany. And I'm here today with Dr. Sara Osterhoudt, who is a professor, assistant professor in the Department of Anthropology at Indiana University. And we are going to talk about her new book, Vanilla Landscapes: Meaning, Memory, and Cultivation of Place in Madagascar. Maybe for those of you that don't know this, vanilla is an orchid. Sarah's book is about an orchid and an orchid in Madagascar, and this is timely for a number of reasons. And one of those reasons is that right now at the New York Botanical Garden is the 15th annual orchid show this year, which is Orchids of Thailand. Sarah, I know that orchids are not really uh, from Madagascar. How did that happen? How did vanilla get to Madagascar? What is the history of vanilla?
Thanks. Yeah, so the vanilla orchid is not originally from Madagascar. It's from Mesoamerica. They think that it was in Mexico. Probably the Aztecs were the first group to actually cultivate vanilla. But then around the early 1800s, the French, along with many European countries, were trying to get into the spice trade, the global spice trade. And vanilla was an obvious target that people wanted to get control of, to cultivate. It's a pretty valuable species.
Mm-hmm.
So they attempted to move it around the globe, and one place it ended up was in islands off the Indian Ocean. And then the next big question was how to hand pollinate it, because in Mexico there's a species of bees that will do the pollination, but the bees didn't travel with the orchid, so it wasn't until people figured out how to pollinate vanilla by hand that it really took off as a crop. Then the French brought it to Madagascar and other islands around the Indian Ocean, the Bourbon Islands, and that's where they started to really try to corner the global vanilla industry.
What was it that attracted you to that story, the story of vanilla in Madagascar?
My career in Madagascar started as a Peace Corps volunteer in 2005. I went with my husband, Nathaniel Delafield. We were stationed in Madagascar, and we were invited by the community to help them with their vanilla. I didn't know anything about vanilla when I landed. I didn't know it was an orchid. I didn't know how amazing it was. And in fact, I didn't really want to work with vanilla. I was just coming out of a degree program where I was really looking at parks and conservation. So at first, I resisted all of the talk about vanilla and let Nat do that. But clearly, people did not want to talk to me about parks. They did not want to talk to me about anything but vanilla. And it was clear that this is what really captivated people. This is what they love to do. It's what they love to think about. It was economically very important. It was ecologically very important, culturally very important. So finally, I just said, okay, I'll look at vanilla. And very soon I became myself completely captivated by it. It's a beautiful species. It has an amazing ecological niche in these agroforestry systems. And so ironically, perhaps now I too can only talk about vanilla, just like the farmers when I started working there.
One of the really strong points of the book is that it is so interdisciplinary, and so it has anthropology and it has ecology and it has botany and it has ethnobotany in it. There's some challenges, I would imagine, and one in conducting research using several different lenses and also trying to incorporate that in a book. And so, can you say a few words about the challenges or the joys of trying to blend all of these things together in a book about vanilla in Madagascar?
Sure. Well, there are definitely challenges and joys. I think that's the spectrum. And I tried different approaches, and what I came back to is, when I was working in the field in Madagascar, I spent most of my 18 months of field work really just working with farmers out in these fields. And disciplinary boundaries that I learned about them, they just all fell away out when you're out working with a farmer. So we would be looking at a clove tree in these fields, and all of a sudden we'd be talking about the history of this tree, the idea of land tenure, the economic return from the clove harvest. We would talk about ancestors, the nature of the afterlife, what people wanted for their children. And this was all just a course of a really good conversation. And I didn't think much about disciplines when I was doing my work. But then coming back and having to write about it, it was really challenging to say, how do I present all this different material without losing this really important thread that ties this all together as together? That's a big point of the book, that it's important that these things are all together. That's partly what sustains these landscapes. And probably the most experimental thing I did was in the actual chapter where I present a lot of the economic botany research, where instead of trying to meld the narratives together as an anthropologist and an economic botanist, which just I tried over and over and it just felt like something was missing, I just separated them and said, okay, what if we just toggle back and forth between them?
Well, Sara, we're thrilled to be producing your book, and we're all looking forward to when it comes out. And thank you so much for talking to us today. And I know you're on your way to Madagascar right now. Is that correct?
It's correct.
So thank you for taking the time for speaking with me.
Thank you so much. It was great.